Hello and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Couch Brotato Podcast. And on today's show, I'm joined by a good friend, Jason. Jason, why don't you tell the guys and gals what we're talking about today?
We are reviewing AEW's pay-per-view, 2023's All In from Wembley Stadium.
That's right. We're going to give you our thoughts on each one of the matches, give you our thoughts and reviews, and we're going to discuss the brouhaha backstage between Jack Perry and CM Punk. So, after the guitar riff, the Couch Brotato Podcast presents to you the AEW All In Recap Show. All right, I am joined this week by Jason. Jason, how's it going, man? How's life been treating you lately?
Not too bad. How's things been your way?
Well, not to divulge anything in the old personal life too much, but yeah, it's been a very hectic week. So, yeah, super hectic, but I think things are starting to settle down a little bit now. Kids are back in school. The school activities are done and over with, or the summer activities, like sports, all that stuff, settling down, start to get into this school routine. So yeah, I think it's good, but chaotic. But wanted to bring you on the show tonight. For those of you that may or may not be aware, AEW put on a little bit of a little wrestling show over in England on Sunday. All In. Sold out Wembley pretty much. I believe Nigel McGuinness during the broadcast said that they had a paid attendance of 81,035 people, which I guess depending on who you believe is the largest crowd for a wrestling show of all time.
You think Vince McMahon would have something to say about that with the Silver Dome?
You know what? I don't know that. Well, WrestleMania 32, I think, had 101,000 people, they said. But the WWE has been notorious to fudge the numbers, and it really depends on how they defined attendance. Because I know AEW considered the 81,000 paid attendance, and then during the media scrum, Tony Khan said between staff and the wrestlers and everyone else, essential personnel inside the building, they were closer to 90,000.
I mean, that's pretty epic for a company that started, 3 or 4 years ago?
I believe they're coming up on their 5th anniversary in, I guess it depends on their anniversary. Dynamite would be 5 years old, I think, in October.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty cool for a company that's still kind of working to build themselves to have that kind of crowd and an international crowd at that. I mean, of course, the people in London love their wrestling, but I mean, that's pretty special to have that type of crowd.
Yeah, well, it was their first time basically doing a tour outside of Canada and the United States. I did during my research for this, AEW is actually more popular in the UK than the WWE.
Looking at it, I think it's kind of I don't know if I would say the diversity of the roster, but maybe a lot of the wrestlers on the roster at AEW, I think majority of them kind of hone their craft overseas, whether it be in Japan, Europe. And I think that played into their favor, but I mean, that crowd was unbelievable.
Yeah, the crowd, they got there and they came to rock and roll. They were on fire through the majority of that show. I mean, but anytime AEW puts on a show, sometimes it feels almost like a war of attrition because like, what I really like about what WWE's done with their premium live events over the last couple of years, it's like it's 3 hours and that's it. Except for WrestleMania. WrestleMania runs longer, but it's WrestleMania. But AEW seems to run a little long, and there's times when they run shows on a non-holiday weekend, I get to about that 11:30 point when the main event's getting ready to start, and I just think to myself, "Fuck, I'm going to pay for this tomorrow morning."
Oh yeah, I don't miss that about WWE when they were doing they would run long, and God, that next morning was, well, the one that comes to mind. What's the WrestleMania where the women headlined? I can't remember the number. 35, maybe?
It might have been 35, yeah. You talking about with Rousey, Charlotte, and yeah, that WrestleMania was, it's like fucking tune in tomorrow for the conclusion.
Yeah, it was after 1:00 when I remember, I think Charlotte was taking that helicopter, and I was like, God damn, like I can't stay up for this. Like I gotta work at 7.
Yeah, I think I think I called in sick the next day. Like, I'm not going to be in. I've got a stomach bug, but it's just like, fuck, there's no way I'm going in. But
yeah, that was terrible. But I mean, it didn't feel like that long of a show. I mean, you really had solid action after solid action in every match. So that was good.
Yeah, it just seemed like it kind of flew right by, and I don't know why more companies don't do this. I really like the 1 p.m. start time, especially on a Sunday, because in a couple of weeks the NFL's starting up, so kind of gets you in the mode for football. Like NFL football is like, okay, well now wrestling's at 1:00, and then like here in a couple of weeks, football's like just you don't skip a beat.
Yeah. I mean, it could be interesting. I like the Saturday pay-per-view.
I do prefer the WWE Saturday format because you don't have if it runs long, you've got Sunday, and then AEW is pretty good though for the most part. There's shows outside of Revolution and then Forbidden Door. They run them on a holiday weekend. Well, and Full Gear's on Saturday. So you only got the 2 pay-per-views that run like just on a normal Sunday night that seem to go super long. But yeah, I love the Saturday format. I wish that they would just adopt that. UFC does it, WWE does it now. I don't understand why AEW doesn't do it either.
Well, they've got Collision on Saturday night.
Oh yeah, that's true. And before we get into All In, speaking of Collision, I sure you have heard the story that broke. Sean Ross Sapp broke this story right in the middle of the Takeshita Bullet Club Gold versus Kenny Hangman and Ibushi match, but there was apparently a bit of a brouhaha backstage between one Jack Perry and CM Punk.
Yeah, like what the heck? I'm trying to think, is this a work? But I don't know. Like, what the hell is this guy's problem? I mean, now granted, we all knew the rumors going in about CM Punk confronting Jack Perry about wanting to use real glass in a match, and Punk telling him it wasn't safe to do. But then to kind of, I don't want to say go into business for yourself, but to make the comment that Jungle Boy did on the pre-show about the glass from the limo, I kind of felt like he did that to kind of to poke at CM Punk. And he probably should have just kept the damn mouth shut about it. Like, I mean, he probably could have made a reference to it without exactly saying it the way he did. But no, I'm not going to take any side in this because I think it's kind of petty on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't blame Punk, and as kind of the year has gone on, I kind of see his point of view in the whole brawl after All Out last year. Like, granted, he took shots at, Kenny and the Bucks, but then they go into his locker room to confront him about it, and it's like, okay, shit's going to go down. And I personally, I don't understand why people are trying to pick a fight with CM Punk anyways. Granted, his MMA record, not the greatest, but he's still a trained MMA fighter. And I would not want to fuck with somebody that could easily like break my arm or my ankle on a whim.
Exactly. Well, you have that, and I don't think we're ever really going to get the full story of what actually happened. There's reports saying that Punk confronted him, and others saying that Jack confronted CM Punk. I don't know. And if this is what really went down, it's just kind of like, when does it all just end and adults can be adults?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The latest that I've read, as we record on a Tuesday night, that apparently right before he went on, Punk had said something to Jack Perry about him having a problem. And then it got to where they were in each other's face, and then Punk pie-faced him and then threw him in a chokehold until they broke it up. And I guess Punk got mad and said that, I'm paraphrasing, but basically he doesn't know why he still works in AEW. And I guess he stormed off, had words with Tony Khan, and today, Sports Illustrated reported that both of them are currently suspended, so that means they're going to miss All Out, which is in Punk's hometown of Chicago. Which
your biggest Chicago star is going to be at that pay-per-view.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't blame Punk for sticking up for himself, which is essentially what it is if he's found wrong, but I don't understand why it has to go down on like big shows, because honestly, I still think that the All Out from last year is one of the best pay-per-views they've ever done. Not the best, but it's arguably like a very like a top 5 pay-per-view that they put on. And then now in the biggest show that this company's ever done, in front of 80,000 plus people, it's kind of been overshadowed by more backstage shit involving your biggest star.
Yeah. Well, I also had read that there was something about when Punk landed in London, there was no ride to the hotel. He had no idea where he was going, and his calls to the office went unanswered, and he ended up walking. And
he ended up taking the train to Wembley. And I also read today too that apparently right before his match he said he wasn't going to go on and he was just going to walk out, to the point where Tony Khan went to Kenny and the Bucks to see if they could go on first. And well, originally it was going to be FTR and the Bucks. I don't know why I said the Bucks. I've got them on my mind still, but he originally went to the Bucks and FTR to see if they could go on first, and they said that they couldn't. So then he went to Kenny and Hangman and the Bullet Club to see if they could go on first, and they said that they could. So they were scrambling to get ready to go on first, and then Samoa Joe apparently talked Punk into coming back, which I guess from what I've read too, Samoa Joe was pretty irate at Punk too.
Yeah, and I don't blame him. I mean, this is his payday too.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting towards like, the end of his run as like kind of like a regular wrestler and, kind of to go out in front of 80,000 people. I mean, that could be the last time he does that too.
Yeah. That sucks. I love Samoa Joe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lucas, former co-host, friend of the show, he told me that he misses Samoa Joe in WWE.
Man, I really wish they could have made serious money with just him and Brock having like a series of matches, like the John Cena Edge type. We're gonna have 37 pay-per-view matches in a row, and I probably would have watched every single one of them.
Yeah,
I feel like they really missed the ball on.
Yeah, I think a lot of it just had to do with the fact that it seemed like he was getting to be chronically injured a lot, and it really, you can only wait so long for somebody. I mean, as much as we like Samoa Joe, he wasn't a huge WWE draw, so it's kind of had that going against him too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Messy situation. Like you said, I'm almost wondering if it could be like, hey, I can't get anything with Omega and the Bucks, so why not just manufacture something of my own? Let me just pick a fight with this kid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's something else I don't understand. Like, why wouldn't there's money to be made with what happened? Why wouldn't you capitalize on that? Because I think that would be probably the biggest thing that AEW could do at this point is have the Bucks against CM Punk or, the Elite and put FTR with Punk.
Well, I think it's just a matter of Kenny and the Bucks don't want to do it. I know Punk's on record saying like he's all for it, but I think it's on the other side. They don't want nothing to do with it. Which is why they have Punk has his own show, which I'm sure it just now is just come across as a great idea. Like, okay, you're building your show around arguably the biggest star in your company, and now he's not going to be there. And then it seems like the Elite have Dynamite.
So what are you going to do now? Like suspend Punk for 6 months and say, oh, hey, I'm going to create this new show on Thursdays for you. You're going to be the star. Tune into TBS for AEW Annihilation every Thursday.
Yeah. It's just going to be Punk, FTR, and a bunch of jobbers.
Probably the cast from Heels.
Yeah, like Stephen Amell, or you're just going to get like local guys, like local promotions, like tonight, AEW battles, Cincinnati Championship Wrestling at the Armory in Newport, Kentucky.
Oh, gee. We're fighting outside.
They're fighting at a Chevrolet dealership. They've got a ring set up outside. The brawl at the auto mall.
Oh, yeah, the Joe Morgan Auto Mall.
Well, hey, let's dig into the show a bit. Kind of wanting to get your thoughts on some of these matches. I figured we would just break them, talk a little bit about them, and at the end we'll kind of give them a star rating out of 5. If that works for you, and then we'll grade the show overall.
Yeah.
First match was, as we discussed, was CM Punk versus Samoa Joe. I thought this was an interesting choice to open up the show, considering that usually openers are like kind of more fast-paced matches. Like I would have maybe expected the following match to lead off because, it's Kenny and, all those guys have New Japan roots. But I thought this was a solid opener. These guys kind of worked style. You could tell that some of the spots they had, they've worked in a stadium before.
Yeah. I love the Samoa Joe walk away from the aerial moves. Like
that is one of my favorite like spots in professional wrestling is Samoa Joe just nonchalantly walks out of the way when somebody tries to do like a top rope spot. It's still hilarious, and I've seen it probably 50 or 60 times.
Yeah, I mean, well, I will say, like, I think Punk's looking better and better in the ring. I don't know how much longer his career gonna be, but I think.
Well, I guess it depends on if he could just keep his mouth shut.
Yeah, at this point, Jesus. But I think it's just the familiarity with the opponent really helped. I mean, Samoa Joe's had some excellent matches over the years. And these two, they mesh really well together. It was a solid match. I was surprised it was the opener too. I thought maybe a little later in the night, but yeah, it's solid for an opener.
Yeah, I dug the CM Punk tribute to Terry Funk, who passed away earlier in the week, and then he also kind of pulled a little bit of a Hulk Hogan with the cup to his ear too. So I dug that. But yeah, I thought this was a solid match. I would probably say this is probably a 3.5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, I would probably right around there, but I'd probably say maybe a 3.25.
Yeah. Oh, we're back on the Star Search rating scale that we had a few weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, that 3.25, 3.5. That's probably about where this sits in. Yeah, good way to start the show. And then they went into we got did they come out as the Golden Elite, or were they just the Elite? Or I never did pay attention.
They come out as the Golden Elite.
Okay, yeah, the Golden Elite, which was Kenny Omega, Kota Ibushi, and Hangman Adam Page, took on Bullet Club Gold, which is Juice Robinson and Jay White, who have been just on an absolute tear on Collision lately. And then Takeshita, I don't want to butcher his name because I love the guy, so I'm not going to attempt to butcher his first name. But I thought this was a pretty solid match, not quite up to snuff with what we got in the opening, but still pretty solid. Takeshita snuck the win out at the end to set up the all-out match this coming Sunday between him and Kenny. But what are your thoughts on this one?
I really feel like this particular match had too much talent to be a 6-man match. I mean, for me personally, I think you have legitimately 3 of the top 10 wrestlers in the world in this match. And Kenny, Ibushi, and I'm a big Jay White fan.
Also am I.
But, I mean, you have also 3 others that are really, really solid. And I know they were building towards the Kenny Takeshita feud that's the match that's going to happen next Sunday. This is one of those matches I just felt was kind of rushed. And I mean, I know they've been kind of feuding with the Elite, the Bullet Club Gold, and I don't know, like it was a good, solid match. I liked the finish because I wasn't expecting that. But again, I just think there was too much talent in that match for. I would have felt better if they would have broken off, maybe had a tag team out of it in a singles match. But I do want to say, like, one thing about this match. Did you notice the guy off to the left in the crowd? He was dressed in all black. He kept standing up. At one point during, I think they were brawling in the ring, and Hangman came in there and was kind of clearing house. And this guy is just standing up, waving his hands, going nuts. And then he sat down real quick, and he popped back up, and he started doing this weird dance.
No, I did not notice that, but now I'm going to have to go back and watch it.
I had to watch it like 2 or 3 times. It was hilarious because I'm sure somebody said, "Shut the fuck down." They didn't do it again, but it was absolutely hilarious. Like, he shot up the first time and kept throwing his hands up in the air. And then he sat down real quick, and he popped back up and did this weird dance. Funniest thing, and like I kind of lost track of what was going on in the match because I kept waiting to see if this guy was going to pop back up, but never really did. It was hilarious.
That was a guy that was super stoked that he got on the camera side for the biggest event of all time.
Oh yeah, that guy was having a hell of a time.
Well, you know what though, I would do the same thing. Fuck it, like just let loose, have a good time. Like I'm sure those seats are not cheap. I mean, Lucas and I paid a pretty sum for not great but okay seats for WrestleMania, so I can't imagine what seats for all in would be for like camera view, but yeah, this I thought was a solid match, but I think this was the kind of setup next or this upcoming week's pay-per-view. Which, what are your thoughts on that? I thought I was talking to a friend of the show, Will, who's been on here quite a few times, that I think that Tony Khan believed that HBO Max was going to run All In on their channel, and then when they decided not to, he kind of had to force this, basically turn this into a pay-per-view, and then then you're running another pay-per-view. I think it's just an awful lot to ask of fans to shell out $100 in a week on wrestling pay-per-views.
Well, I mean, you have that, and then you're trying to write 3 shows, 3 TV shows, and then 2 pay-per-views all in a span of 9 days. It really... when you and I were talking yesterday, like that was the main thing about this was this felt really rushed, and there really wasn't a build to a lot of the stuff that was going on. And I don't know, like I'm kind of wondering if Tony may be getting a little overwhelmed, and he's just rushing things out. But yeah, it's really weird to have 2 pay-per-views on back-to-back weekends. And well, I mean, if you really look at it, he had 3 TV shows last week, a pay-per-view, 3 TV shows this coming week, pay-per-view. So that's what, 8 shows that you have to write for?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, that's an awful lot to ask, not just from your talent, but your writers and then, like you said, fans shelling out $50 a piece for the pay-per-view.
Yeah, for me, I don't know how you feel about this, but I would think that right now I'm probably not going to get All Out simply because I don't think it's going to match what All In delivered. And like I said, it's $100 in a week is quite a bit of money to shell out for wrestling pay-per-views. And on top of that, WWE's running Payback on Saturday for the cost of a Peacock subscription, which is like $6.
Man, Tony,
it's a lot of wrestling.
Really needs to look into. I know he's talking streaming, but
well, the last I heard was that Warner Discovery is like tossing around the idea of Max, the former HBO Max, running live streaming, but I don't think that their maiden voyage is going to be for a wrestling event. I think they would use that for one of their bigger media properties, which they have Major League Baseball playoffs. They have the March Madness television rights. I think that if they're going to launch into that, it's going to be for one of those properties or like something with the NBA. I would see them doing that before they launched it with wrestling. But Tony, why can't you do a fucking combo pack? Like if you buy both of them, you get them for like $80. I would like, okay, cool. Like I can shell out an extra $15 because I split the cost with a friend. Sue me, whatever. but I could justify shelling out an extra $10-15 for both of them versus what I pay now. So I don't know.
Oh.
But what would your grade be for the 6-man tag?
Probably probably go 3.
Yeah, that's about where I'd say that too. It was good, not great. And I think that this match was more to serve a purpose to build for next week's pay-per-view versus kind of wrap up any storylines for this one or to continue like a bigger feud between all of them. Next match was the match that I was looking forward to the most on this entire card. It was the AEW World Tag Team Championship match. It was the rubber match between FTR and the Young Bucks. I will say that this was a good match, but I think out of the 3 matches that these two teams have done, this is probably the weakest of the 3.
Yeah, I could go with that.
It seemed to kind of not be firing on all cylinders until like the last 10 minutes. Then the last 10 minutes of the match, it like fucking kicked up a notch.
Yeah. I do. Was it Nick that did the Bret Hart hands thing to Dax? I like that, and I'm not a Young Bucks fan. I don't particularly. I've never really cared for them at any point in their career, but they always have good matches. And I mean, I say this is a solid one. It's not the best one that they've ever done, and I think they're, it could have been that. Maybe there's a little bit of a cloud hanging over what's going on with Dash. But I mean, you're not going to find better tag team wrestling than those two teams.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, of course, WWE has some great teams. And yeah, that would be a dream to see some of them go head to head, but they're 2 of the best tag teams in the world, and it was a solid tag team match.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that considering what the story that they were selling, it really wasn't about the tag team titles. It was really to settle who's the best tag team in professional wrestling. I mean, honestly, my rankings is I prefer FTR. I think they're the best tag team in wrestling, and I would probably say the Bucks are probably 3. For me, I really am a fan of the Usos.
They've grown on me, and yeah, I would put them at...
Oh, you haven't been down with that day one-ish?
No. Not until I'd probably say maybe 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the definitive number 2 for me.
Yeah. Yeah, this is still a really good match, and up until so far on the card, this is probably the best match that so far on this card. The FTR ends up retaining the AEW tag team titles. I think you won't see these two teams go at it again for quite a long time. It seems like when they set up these rubber matches, that's it for a while. Like you don't see, like I know Jericho and Kenny have done 3, and those two have not battled each other since then.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of glad they do it that way because it doesn't get stale.
Yeah, I agree. And it kind of, I think it doesn't get stale, and I think that the matches that they do have kind of have a little bit more of a gravitas, like they mean something. Versus like, oh, okay, well, this is just the means to get to the next show or the next pay-per-view. But yeah, I thought this was still a good match, but considering the work of these two teams, like the fact that this match is probably the weakest of their 3 really says something to how good they are.
Yeah.
I'm giving this one 4 out of 5.
Yeah, it's where I'm going 4 out of 5.
If anything, simply for the last 10 minutes. like where they ended up using their moves on one another. Then that shatter machine out of nowhere. Oh man, I was on the edge of my seat for those last 10 minutes.
Yeah, that was really.
Next up is the Stadium Stampede, which features the Blackpool Combat Club, which is John Moxley, Wheeler Yuta, and Claudio. And they are teaming up with the Return of the Proud and Powerful, which is Ortiz, and now I guess they're calling Santana Mike Santana.
I was like, what the hell who the hell is Mike Santana?
Yeah, they mentioned that a couple times. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I
heard Nigel say Mike Santana, and I'm like, who the hell is Mike Santana?
I started to look it up, like, is that his real first name is Mike? But then I just kind of got lost in the match and forgot about it. They take on the team of Eddie Kingston, Orange Cassidy, the Best Friends, and I always call him Pentagon Jr. I know he lost to copyright. He's Penta El Miero. I always call him Pentagon Jr. But this Stadium Stampede, I was reading a lot online. This was a very divisive match. People either loved it or they hated it, which seems to be the thing with like Moxley matches for like the last year or so.
Yeah, I wasn't really a fan of this. Not necessarily because of the action that was. I mean, the skewers to the head, that was a pretty cool moment.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole build of this match didn't seem to make much sense to me. I mean, Eddie Kingston's the one who said this match was going to happen. Like, why does Eddie Kingston what's Eddie Kingston doing with the Best Friends? And why is he the one that come out and said, hey, I'm fighting with them and we're fighting you guys in Stadium Stand? Like, it didn't make any sense to me. And then they never really explained the Santana and Ortiz fighting with the Blackpool Combat Club. This whole thing just felt.
I know they had kind of intertwined one another. I know the Best Friends have had issues with the Blackpool Combat Club, more Chuck and Trent. And then Eddie is also, of course, he absolutely hates Claudio. Like I truly believe he does not like Claudio in real life. And then you've got the backdrop of him and Moxley being friends that are not getting along right now. But the combinations are kind of weird. I felt that this was kind of a match more to get Orange Cassidy on the card, who I am on record as saying I think has been the MVP of AEW for the last for the calendar year so far. He has just put on nonstop bangers left and right. But I thought this was a fun match. Nothing spectacular. Like I was more like the Stadium Stampede just felt more like Anarchy in the Arena versus Stadium Stampede. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Stadium Stampede was essentially done in an empty football field during the pandemic. And, you can't really do that as much. And it felt more like they were in like more of an Anarchy in the Arena style match. But I still enjoyed it. I thought it was good. The result was Orange Cassidy gets the win for his team with a orange punch with his fist taped in glass, which I hope CM Punk and they got that squared away with CM Punk and Jack Perry beforehand. Who did he nail that on, by the way? I looked away for a second.
Was it Wheeler?
Yeah, I think he did. I think he got Wheeler with it. Because it seems like
my favorite.
It seems like whenever the Blackpool Combat Club takes an L, it's usually Wheeler's the one seating the pin because obviously Moxley is like a big deal, so it has to mean something for him to take a pin. And then Claudio is obviously the Ring of Honor World Champion, so he has to come off as strong.
I will tell you my favorite moment of this is Sue pulls into the arena in that white van.
Oh, dude. And she had I don't know if they were cookies or they were crumpets or what, but that was great.
My favorite part is Moxley gets into the driver's seat and pushes her. Damn, man. Like that pop Trent right up. Like, touch my mom.
Yeah, they even made a comment during the broadcast that seemed like the best friends like kind of woke up and like took it up a notch once they start fucking with Sue.
Yeah, that was great.
It looks like they are going to set up Moxley versus Orange Cassidy at All Out, which is a match I would probably like to see. And I think this is the first. If that's the case, I think that's the first time that Orange's title reign as the international champions is in serious doubt, because he's going up against. I mean, I think right now in terms of star power, Moxley's on their Mount Rushmore. He's got to be, one of the 3 or 4 biggest stars in the whole company. So,
yeah, well, I liked that after that match when they were talking to Orange Cassidy and Tony Khan standing right there, and he challenged Jon Moxley for the title at All Out. And then, like, Tony, like, you could see on his face, no, you're fighting Penta next. And then the winner of that fights Moxley.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of like, you're giving it away.
Yeah. That should be a good match, too. I am an absolute huge Penta fan. He's probably one of my 3 or 4 favorite wrestlers in that promotion. I love his gimmick and everything. But good match. I would probably settle on a 3 out of 5 for this one.
Yeah, I mean, there were good parts in it, and I'm glad that Orange Cassidy got the win, but I'm going to go with the 2.
2? Okay. I did notice one thing before we move on to the next match, that when Eddie Kingston is storming down the ring, he looks like a pissed off parent that is just fed up with his fucking kids keeping him up late at night, and he's storming down to the basement.
I love Eddie Kingston and I love Claudio, but I really hope he beats the hell out of Claudio.
I do too.
The hate that he has for him, we all hate somebody like that. I mean,
well, Eddie Kingston too is like legitimately like the one wrestler out of like the 2 major promotions that like is kind of like us, like neither one of us are going to be, are confused for being bodybuilders and having like these awesome physiques or anything like that. He's just kind of like, okay, I've got a bit of a beer gut, so what?
Yeah.
And I think that's what appeals. Like that's why he has such an appeal. But I liked it. I guess I liked it a little bit more than you. But the next match, I think this is where the crowd kind of starts to get a little bored or a little restless. It's the AEW women's title match. Saraya comes out with her family to Queen's We Will Rock You, which I thought was a very cool entrance. She takes on former AEW women's champion Toni Storm, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, had to do it, and then Hikaru Shida, the current AEW women's champion. This ends with Saraya winning the AEW women's title in front of her home crowd. I thought this match was okay. This really is kind of indicative of how they're booking the women's division right now, which is kind of lacking. But I really have a problem with not so much Saraya winning the title. That's kind of what I thought was going to happen, but I don't understand putting the belt on Shida and then having her lose it 2 weeks later.
That was my exact thing. Like, why are you going to have Toni Storm lose, put it on Shida, and have her lose it 2 weeks later? They should have just kept it on Toni Storm, had her lose it. I think that kind of throws that whole story they have. You could build something from that.
I was thinking the same thing.
It's, what the hell are you doing? Like, I mean, in reality, like, they are Saraya, let's call her Paige. Saraya has not, she just doesn't wrestle a lot. And
well, I think go ahead.
Well, I think she doesn't look comfortable. I'll say. And like, there's just not, she's had the one match with Britt that I thought was a really solid match. I mean, her first real big match back, but she just doesn't wrestle enough. And I don't think she's kind of broken, or she's kind of gotten back what's she had.
Mm.
And I mean, I understand why they did what they did, and I don't have a problem with it. It's just that ball should have gone to Toni Storm losing the title instead of Hikaru Shida.
Yeah, like they've already been teasing that there's dissension in the ranks of the Outcast. I think it would have been a much better story to have Saraya pin Toni Storm to create more of a dysfunction between that group versus arguably the best, like in terms of like a worker standpoint, the best worker in your entire division. I'd say it's her and Toni Storm. They're usually like, they're both are pretty good. And then, well, of course, Jamie Hayter, but she's not in action right now, which really, really is unfortunate. But
yeah, I mean, if it were me, I think I would have put the belt on Britt, have her defend it, be this mega star. Jamie comes back. They're all kind of back to where they left off, and then boom, like something happens, and these two are at odds. I never lost that title type of deal, and I think that would be the story that I would have went with, because, like I said, I just don't. Saraya just hasn't wrestled enough to. I mean, I understand why they gave her the title, but
I think it's kind of why now looking back, I think WWE made the right call not putting the world title on Cody at WrestleMania, because you're doing it for the pop, but then what happens after that?
This will think there is. Yeah, I see what you're getting at now. That makes complete sense.
Well, I think too, Saraya's only got so many matches left where, I mean, she can't, wrestle let's be real, AEW doesn't book more than one match a week on their shows anyways, but I think that she's going to be one of those attractions that she's going to be there a lot more, but she won't be wrestling too much. I would not be the least bit surprised to see her drop it at All Out Sunday, whether it's to Shida which I think would be the most logical choice. But then again, you're devaluing the title if you keep having to go back and forth like that. But I think she drops it sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And I know they keep talking about Mercedes Moné and Sasha Banks. She was there, and they keep talking about her making appearances for AEW once she's cleared. I mean, she had to look at that and think, like, what in the world? Like, what was the decision making behind this? Or if she does go there, what kind of booking are they going to have for her?
Right. And you bring up an interesting question that I want to ask you too. If you were Mercedes Moné, would you be willing to sign like a full-time deal with AEW to become part of that women's division? Or would you try to work out some kind of agreement, kind of like what AEW has with like Will Ospreay as an example, who works there on occasion, but he's not a full member of the roster. He just kind of comes in for like special appearances for a few weeks.
I think that would be the only way I would do it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking too.
I mean, you see, I think they have a legitimate star with Britt. And they probably have one of the best women wrestlers in the world in Hikaru Shida. And you've seen how they've been booked. And I mean, even if what's the one? I can't think of her name now. They came over from WWE.
Ruby
She's the
Soho.
Ring of Honor.
Oh,
The
Athena.
Ring of Honor. Yeah, Athena.
Which that girl's been put, like, she's been fucking killing it over there.
Yeah, and I mean, why isn't she? Well, I don't know. There's rumors of some kind of a heat with, I can't even remember who, but
heat in an AEW locker room, get out of town.
Yeah, no way that happens.
Right.
But I mean, she's one of your better wrestlers, women's wrestlers on the roster. Like, why isn't she involved more? And why is it, yeah, like you said, why is there only one match a week?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes you kind of forget that when those women come out, like, oh yeah, I forgot she wrestled here.
Yeah.
You usually get the bunny tagging with someone else that you have no idea who they are, and against like Willow Nightingale and some other wrestler that you know, Sky Blue. And I mean, we have been seeing Sky Blue a lot lately, especially on Collision, and I'm okay with that. But yeah, this is the worst booking, I think, in wrestling right now.
Yeah. And I think in terms of talent from top to bottom, I think AEW's women's division right now in terms of talent is better than what WWE has to offer. WWE, I think, is very top heavy, whereas AEW has a lot of like really good women wrestlers, but they just don't utilize them. I mean, you still got two women on the shelf right now, Thunder Rosa and Jamie Hayter. Of course, you had the four ladies that were involved in the championship match. You've got Ruby Soho. You've got Chris Statlander, who I was shocked that they didn't have anything for her at this. Willow Nightingale. She's actually, when I seen her for the first time on AEW programming, I thought, okay, this is kind of like the happy-go-lucky wrestler that's just going to get jobbed out every week. But she's actually surprisingly very good. Sky Blue is also another solid worker. But yeah, I mean, they have a very solid division. I don't understand why they don't do more with it.
You know, I never really thought about that. You know, after I probably say the top 6 or 7 women in WWE, it just kind of falls off.
Yeah, it's WWE. It's Charlotte, Becky, Bianca, Rhea. I would say Asuka's probably like in that next tier down. But yeah, she'd probably be like one of the better workers. And I mean, I think they're doing a little bit better job. They're building up. Io Sky obviously has the Money in the Bank. Yeah. And then Bailey, of course, is always really good. But yeah, outside of them, and like there's a massive drop off after those 6 or 7 ladies there. But this match, I'd probably give it a 2.5 out of 5. It seemed like it. You said earlier that the 6-man tag kind of felt rushed. I felt the same way about this one.
Yeah, I mean, this all just kind of felt like it came together last minute.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't like who they had lose it. Well, I didn't like that Sheena took the loss. I didn't like that. Well, I mean, I don't mind that Saraya has the belt. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it was a cool moment to see her win it in her home country, especially after everything she's gone through. And she's one of those wrestlers, I don't understand the hate that she gets online. She is vilified on social media, and I have never understood why. I mean, granted, she's battled some demons, but I mean, like, nobody's perfect. And she seems to be like a genuinely very cool chick when she's interviewed. And when she's throwing shit back at people, she's only defending herself. So I don't understand why people, especially men, hate her so much online. I've just never understood that.
I think it's just people will say stuff to certain people they know they can get a reaction out of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they just want that. It's kind of like a feather in their cap. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Got to do a Twitter feud with her.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too. I think it's just like, well, it's cool to hate her, so that like everybody gets on the bandwagon and does it. But then there's no legitimate reason on why.
Yeah, no, like I've never had a problem with her. I always thought she was a solid worker. Um, she's had some really, really good matches. Um, I mean, she's not back to where she was, and that's going to happen when you have that much time off. But yeah, I don't really get the hate.
But yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see what happens with the AEW Women's Title next Sunday for their next pay per view. I hope that the next match was Sting and Darby Allin versus James Bond villain Christian and Swerve Strickland. I was kind of excited for this match simply because I'm a huge fan of Sting. He was like my dude in WCW. I was always a WWE guy, but like Sting was my dude in WCW. Christian is just on another plane in terms of heel. Like that guy is just an absolute plays a slime ball to perfection. And I've always felt Swerve Strickland is one of those guys that I don't understand why he's not at top of the card. He is, in terms of a work rate, he is probably maybe outside of Kenny, probably one of the 4 or 5 best workers in the company. So I don't know why he doesn't get more of a run, but I thought this was a solid match. At this point, AEW seems to be relying on the gimmick matches a little too much at this point. I didn't really pay attention to that, but I listened to the 83 Weeks podcast with Eric Bischoff today regarding this, and he had mentioned the reliance on gimmick matches. And then after I stopped and realized that, like, yeah, you're right. They had a 6-man tag. They had a four-way women's title match. They had a hardcore stadium stampede match. You know, now they've got a coffin match in this one. I thought it was solid. It still amazes me to see Sting do the shit that he does at 63 years old. And when he came out to Metallica's Seek and Destroy, I kind of popped a little bit. Metallica is my band. So I heard that opening riff to Seek and Destroy. I'm like, okay, here we go. But
I'm with you. I love Sting. This is another one of those matches that had a change that I'm not really sure what I don't know really what happened. I mean, AR Fox was supposed to be tag with Swerve Strickland. That just kind of did not change happen like last Wednesday, or was it the Wednesday?
Yeah, it happened last Wednesday. He got kicked out of the Mogul Embassy. I think from what I had read, he had some issues being able to go over to England. They never really went into depth why. I think in terms of a match standpoint, I think it would have probably been a better match with AR Fox, but star power wise, like Christian is a much, much better fill in for AR Fox. I mean, Christian is a heat magnet, so I love watching him cut a promo anyway. So like, okay, Christian's involved, count me in.
Yeah. Christian's he's just unreal. I love Christian as a heel. But yeah, I mean, Swerve Strickland's one of my favorites. He always has an excellent match. Not a Darby Allin fan. I mean, Darby's just, we all knew the kid in the neighborhood that we'd give a dime to do something stupid. And that's kind of how I feel about Darby Allin. Let me do a coffin drop.
Oh, my wife, she she was watching the show with me. She wasn't as invested in the show as I was, but she looked up and seen Darby do the coffin drop onto the casket, and she even like grimaced at that. I'm like, the fact that guy can still walk at this point just blows my mind.
Well, wasn't it at one point they had him handcuffed and he's diving through the rope?
That was a cool spot, though. I will give him that.
Yeah, it was a cool spot. Like, my whole thing was when I seen him do it, I'm like, eventually he's going to miss that. And it's not going to be pretty. And, I mean, he reminds me a lot of Jeff Hardy, but I've never been a Hardy Boys fan.
Right, yeah, I wasn't. I get the appeal, but I was never a big Hardy's guy either. The restaurant chain and the tag team.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the one thing that I think AEW does just better than anybody else is they have booked Sting, a 60 whatever year old man.
63, I think is what I heard they say he was.
I mean, he's doing these just unreal spots week after week. And they're doing it the safest possible way. Like, there's really no, I mean, yeah, of course there's risk, but he comes through. And it's freaking awesome. It's like reliving the early 90s in WCW with Sting.
Yeah. I was actually surprised by the match order in this, because usually when Sting is on a pay-per-view, he is and I don't know why they put that match in this position, because usually like Sting and Darby deliver, but they always put them as the cooler match between the main event and then like the previous matches, which is usually like a really good one. And it's like almost like they have to close the show on this wave. And I was a little surprised, like, well, this isn't going on second to last. That's kind of strange, but I thought it was a fun match. It ends with Darby and Sting stuffing Swerve into the coffin, which technically Swerve was not all the way in the coffin. His hair was poking out of it, so they technically didn't win. But I guess that's splitting hairs. But a decent match. Like I said, we love the way they booked Sting. Still great. I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5, simply because it takes a lot for me to pop. And when they played Seek and Destroy and we got the Joker Sting, I'm like, okay, you got me on this one. So I'm giving this a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I think I'm solely going on the Metallica, the Sting spots, and the pre-match promo from Sting and Darby. It was just really cool. I'll go 3 out of 5.
Yeah. Next was the other match that kind of sold me on this pay-per-view. We had Chris Jericho versus Will Ospreay. Of course, Jericho, I was not the least bit surprised that he took this opportunity for Fozzy to play at Wembley. He came out to him and his band did Judas, and he sang himself out to the ring, which was really cool. Got some Freddie Mercury tribute at the beginning with the Day-O, which I thought was kind of cool. Of course, Will Ospreay is just an absolute stud. This was a good match. This was probably better than I expected it to be, because I went into this match kind of like I didn't expect Jericho to be able to keep up with Ospreay as well as he did. Now, granted, he was obviously a step slower, but but that's also to be expected. I think Jericho's like 52. But still a really good match. I give this one like a 3.5 out of 5. But man, anytime I could see Will Ospreay in action, I'm going to take the opportunity to see it. I truly believe in terms of in-ring talent, he is the best wrestler in the world.
I agree with that. And to be honest with you, this was one match when it was announced, I shit on it. It was just like, I don't want to see Jericho against Ospreay. Why the hell does Jericho always get the best possible match or one of the better possible matches. Then he goes out and freaking kills it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I couldn't believe he was keeping up with Ospreay in the opening of that match. I mean, are we getting late 90s Jericho here?
Yeah. Now, if this match would have been 10 years ago, this easily would have been the best match of the night in terms of in-ring, for sure. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to see Jericho do as well as he did. And like, in my top 5 favorite wrestlers of all time, Chris Jericho is definitely on that list. I mean, there's nothing he hasn't accomplished. So I'm kind of a little partial to him in some aspects of that. But yeah, I was surprised by how well this match was. Like I said, Jericho's obviously a step slower, but the fact that he held his own against Ospreay, that's very commendable. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5. I think simply because, for one thing, big stadium shows entrances mean a lot to me. The presentation, Jericho obviously singing himself out to the ring, and then Ospreay, his entrance, like they presented this guy like this is a fucking star right here. Pay attention to this guy. But yeah, I thought it was a good match. They also teased a little bit of dissension between the last remaining member of the Inner Circle and the Jericho Appreciation Society with Sammy. I don't know if that's so much they're setting up a feud, whereas Jericho was upset, and it's almost like he alluded to the fact in his promo last week that social media is starting to write him off. And I think that he's going to start questioning, like, maybe they're right. And I think this could lead to something with him and Sammy down the road, which I think could be potentially a very good feud if done right.
I went with a 4 on this one just because this exceeded my expectations.
Yeah. I'm okay with that, yeah.
And I mean, like I said, when this match was announced, I shit on it just because I didn't know if Jericho, not saying that he didn't deserve it, but is there someone better on the card that you could put with the greatest wrestler in the world or, you know, a top 3 wrestler in the world? I mean, would we have gotten Omega Ospreay 4, which would have been
But I think it's 3. They would be 3.
Is it 3?
Yeah. 2 was at Forbidden Door, which is still the match of the year right now in my books.
Yeah. I thought there might have been one before New Japan, but I can't remember. Yeah, I mean, it exceeded my expectations, and Jericho can still go for his age. And he proved that. And he made a believer out of me once again. And so I will give him a 4 on that.
Yeah, good stuff from those guys. The next match, I will be truthfully honest, I didn't really get a chance to pay attention to this match too much because I had stuff with my kids running around, and I wasn't able to really pay attention to it too much. Oh, I didn't go over the fact Will Ospreay ends up winning that match, hits 2 Stormbreakers on Jericho to get the victory, which is impressive in itself. Next match, though, is the House of Black versus the Acclaimed for the AEW Trios title. That results in the Acclaimed winning the Trios title. I don't even know how the match ends. That was like the one match I didn't really get to pay attention to, so maybe you can help piece the thing together. But I'm giving this an incomplete grade just because I didn't get to watch enough of it to really judge it, and I haven't had a chance to go back and watch it yet.
This was another one that I just felt was kind of thrown together. And I'm not taking anything away from the Acclaim. I love the Acclaim.
Everybody does.
But I really felt like the House Black deserves better. Had a really cool tribute to Bray Wyatt in the opening.
But yeah, we also lost this week too. Yeah, it's been a roller coaster week to be a wrestling fan.
Yeah. But we didn't get daddy ass. We got badass Billy Gunn. which I thought was kind of cool. I mean, bring that back. He did hit a famouser. I believe it was on. Was it on Buddy? Yeah, like I'll have to watch that back. But a cool moment for me. I mean, yeah, the Acclaimed ended up getting the trios title. Not a bad match. It's just I think there were better options. Um, the one cool thing about this match is everyone kind of knows the playfulness between Max Caster and MJF on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Bowens had actually had a picture sent to him after the match where he was kind of doing the scissor with the crowd, like the people in the front row. And he had sent a message to MJF, like, I know you have something going on with Max, but I scissored your daddy. And there's a picture of him scissoring MJF's dad in the front row.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it was hilarious. I thought that's who that was in the front when that happened because he had kind of said something to it, and then Anthony realized who it was, and he's like, oh, and then, yeah, that picture shows up on Twitter later. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. What would your grade for this one be?
Tell you two.
Yeah, that's what I've seen on social media. This is probably one of the weaker matches on the cards. That's why I've been in no hurry to revisit it. It's like, okay, I probably didn't miss a whole lot. So yeah, we'll go with the 2 out of 5. The last match that we have to go over is the main event. MJF, the AEW World Champion, versus Adam Cole for the AEW World Title. They kind of added to their story a little bit earlier in the. I don't know. They call the 0 hour. Is it a pregame show, pre-show? I don't know what exactly they call it. The buy-in, yeah, that's what it is. They captured the AEW, or not the AEW, the Ring of Honor tag team titles from Aussie Open, which is another team that got fucking robbed. It was Aussie Open, but we'll save that for another day. So they go into the match as tag team champions, battling it out for the AEW World Title, and for a main event at a stadium show, depending on who you believe more, one of the 2 or 3 biggest wrestling shows of all time, this one delivered in spades. This was by far the match of the night. Really did a great job of calling back some of the aspects of this program, which I think has been the best program on AEW television over the last 2 or 3 months. These two have been kind of coexisting and then becoming like a team and then becoming friends. A lot of really good callbacks to everything that's happened, and then the ending, like chef's kiss. The double clothesline leading to the double pin. Then they rolled back to their first matchup where Cole asked for 5 more minutes, and then MJF says, fuck it, we're going to go to a winner. And then, of course, the ending, just so well done. Bravo. I hope that this is not... I hope these guys have one more match against each other. I know now that they're the Ring of Honor tag team champions, there's probably going to be... The program's going to be stretched out a little bit longer, but man, well done, AEW, this main event.
Oh, yeah. I 100% agree. Adam Cole's my current favorite wrestler, but I really think we need to start talking about MJF being one of the best wrestlers in the world. This guy has delivered. And I mean, he doesn't wrestle a lot, but when he does, he comes through. And it was a hell of a match. I loved the the Bulldog Bret Hart 10 that Adam Cole had
Mm.
in the match. You know, they put Roderick Strong out there trying to get MJF to use or Adam Cole to use the title. The story in this was unbelievable, and I'm really excited to see where this goes.
Mm. Yeah, I saw my. It's you're always going to have that. Will he or won't he? Will one of them turn on the other one? I've just been blown away by the MJF transformation. He is like he's becoming a full-fledged face, and it seems like he's embracing it.
You know, I was watching this last night, and I kept thinking that at some point in maybe the next 5 to 10 years, could we see MJF being a big name actor? I mean,
Well, you know they're making a movie about the Von Erichs for Netflix, and he's in it.
Yeah. Oh no, man! His brain is just unbelievable. Like you see him do these signings, and he's just a complete fucking dick to these people, and they eat it up. But then, like you read these reports about him online of people that there's one particular guy. Oh, you know, he's a regular at my gym. He's one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, hey, of course it's an act, but I don't think anybody does it any better.
Yeah, for sure. Friend of the show, Lucas, was talking to me last night. He said he thinks that MJF is arguably the best heel, one of the best 2 or 3 best heels in wrestling. I'm like, well, dude, and he's not an AEW fan, so he doesn't know what's going on. But like I said, he's legitimately becoming like the biggest face in that company. He is so over right now with the fans, and it's incredible to see the transformation. And I thought for sure he was going to be the one that ends up going back to the old MJF, the devil that we know. And like when he pulled out the ring, I'm like, all right, here it goes. And then he decides not to do it. And then like I'm thinking now with the way it's going, I think Cole's going to be the one that turns on him.
I'm just wondering, like, is this going to be an undisputed era type? Like they're going to wait for Kyle or Kyle?
I've heard Kyle O'Reilly is having some difficulty coming back. I guess he had a pretty severe, I think it's his neck, if I'm not mistaken. He had a really bad neck injury, and I know there's questions of whether he's going to be able to make it back. So I don't know. I mean, you could form it without him, but it wouldn't be the same thing.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the same. I love the undisputed era, but yeah, I'm excited because, like I said, Adam Cole's my favorite wrestler in either company right now, and MJF. I mean, outside of Roman and probably KO's probably one of my favorite wrestlers too. Just what MJF does on a weekly basis, it's believable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I wish that AEW and WWE put more like thought into storytelling. If they at least invested half the time that they do on like their main storylines versus like, if they devoted a little bit more of that time into the secondary stuff, I mean, I think we would be looking at Attitude Era, like wrestling, where you can't get enough of it. I was getting ready to say something, and I completely lost my train of thought on it. But yeah, I thought it was an incredible matchup. Easily, I would say 4.5 out of 5 for this one. I'm not going to give it a 5 because it wasn't like a classic, but it was definitely a 4.5 out of 5 for sure. And a very worthy main event for the biggest show they've put on. You
know, I think I'm going to go there.
Oh, you're going? Oh, go hot take.
It just had a little bit of everything.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, you felt something, and you didn't really know who you were wanting to win.
Yeah.
And I think it was played perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely okay with it getting into that. We're not Dave Meltzer. We're not going to go like 6.5, 7-star out of 5-star matches. We're not that kind of program here. Like our rating system is like 5 out of 5. That's it. That's where we're going. Yeah, but I know what I was getting ready to say. For the first time in a little while, they've made the AEW championship and the champion like important again with him, with MJF's run. Like the last, outside of Punk, like I know Hangman really got done dirty in his title run, but even like the Moxley stuff, he seemed like he was kind of taking a back seat at times too. But yeah, I mean, MJF has like definitely become the focal point of the show, which good for him. He's been an absolute superstar since he took the title.
I think, and I mean, this is just my thing. I know that Tony's kind of been working with Bryan Danielson. And I'm just wondering if this is kind of his brainchild.
They don't seem to release that online, like who was responsible for like mapping out the matches like they do. Like the next day, like, oh yeah, like I know for the Bray Wyatt tribute show, like Michael Hayes had a lot of input in that. Bobby Roode did too. I mean, that shit's readily available online then within hours after the show, but you never find out who is involved in the AEW stuff at all. So I don't know. But I would not be surprised if Danielson didn't have something to do with it.
Yeah, well, I did read something over the weekend about somebody had asked Tony Khan if he were to get injured or hurt, who his father should call, and it was Danielson. I'm like, yeah, he's probably got some kind of stroke going on back there. But
well, I think after what happened last year with All Out, Jericho and Moxley and Danielson were from what I read anyways, were like kind of like the glue that righted the ship. So I think those guys are kind of like Tony Khan's go-tos for like, okay, like obviously I know Jericho's got a lot of influence on him, but and Danielson now too. So I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I would trust if those guys were the guys that I leaned on during a tumultuous situation, then yeah, they probably got some carte blanche. Before we wrap this up, any final thoughts on AEW's All In?
I mean, it felt a little rushed. A couple of the matches were a little flat. Maybe a little bit of confusion in the matches, but overall solid show. I mean, I enjoyed it. I think a casual fan could sit and watch this and have a decent idea of what is going on. So, I mean, overall, I'd say a high B plus.
Yeah. I went into this with low expectations. I think the only reason I even had interest in purchasing the pay-per-view was not so much what they were presenting, but I was curious to see if AEW could pull off a show of this size. Because, I mean, they were not going from like, you know, arenas to like, I don't know, say like, I don't know, we'll just like the Horseshoe in Columbus, you know, something like that, like a big, like they went to one of the biggest stadiums in the entire world and put on a show. And I was curious to see if they could pull it off. And I think they did it in spades. Like the presentation of the show, it really, they really did a good job of showing off like how many people were in the building. And that seems to be a thing with like AEW. It's almost like they did it intentionally, because if you read shit about AEW online. Like, everybody has to post that fucking picture of how empty the arenas look. And a lot of times they're posting it on the camera side, which, if any of you have been to an AEW show, they block that entire section off where the camera's at. They do it every show that I've been to, even back, like, I went to a show right after the All Out where Danielson and Cole show up. I went to that episode right after that pay-per-view, and it was the same thing. That building was sold out. But I think they did a good job of just presenting how epic the event was. I think for the most part, the matches delivered. There were a few speed bumps along the way. I think if I had a gripe, it would probably be the way they front-loaded the beginning of the card. Because, I mean, they gave you Punk, Omega, FTR, and the Young Bucks, like, in a row. And Moxley. So the first 4 matches had arguably your biggest stars in the promotion. I think they would have been better served, like, maybe splitting that up a little bit. Like, maybe move the Acclaimed into an earlier spot. I mean, granted, I kind of seen the placement of the women's title match and some other stuff, but I think maybe do a better job of, like, spacing out your stars a little bit. But yeah, I'm going to give it a solid B. I think just because some of the better matches didn't quite, like, the 6-man tag, considering he was involved in that. And but yeah, I'd say a good B. Probably one of the better shows they put on. It's outside of Forbidden Door. I think it's the best show they put on this year. But, well, then again, I don't know. Revolution was really good too. That had some really good matches on it too. But yeah, definitely recommend shelling out the $50 to watch it. It was a worthwhile experience for sure, and it sounds like AEW's coming back next year. Before we let you go, last question. This was brought to me by a friend of the show, Lucas. He said that, or he asked me about what we thought, since AEW was able to sell out Wembley. Do you see the WWE running WrestleMania at Wembley at some point?
Ooh, the people of Europe are really, I think they kind of make WrestleMania every year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to go over there. I mean, I think they've earned it. They haven't had a major pay-per-view. I mean, when they do the Clash at the Castle,
which was probably the best show that they put on last year.
Yeah. But I mean, again, that's not really one of their every year. It's just like a special event like the Saudi or the Australia event.
Mm-hmm.
And, the European fans really make the WrestleMania and the Raw after WrestleMania. And I think they kind of deserve the opportunity to have it live. I mean, at least once.
I think it depends on how All In does next year, because this is the first time AEW's been overseas, and AEW is obviously more popular, so it's going to be kind of one of those, like, I had to be at the first one type of mentalities when you bought tickets. So I'm curious to see how well it does in year 2. And I think if it does well in its second year, then yeah, maybe the WWE visits that at some point. Like, maybe if not WrestleMania, then perhaps SummerSlam, which is their second biggest event of the year, bringing that back to the UK. But yeah, I think it really hinges on how well All In does next year. So, well, dude, it was awesome having you on. Love shooting the shit about professional wrestling with you. But you'll be back sooner rather than later. Thank you guys and gals for tuning in this week. Be sure to follow us on social media. The links are in the show description. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads. TikTok, which I keep saying that I need to do better at posting videos on TikTok, and I'm actually going to have my 12-year-old son, run me through a training course on how to post videos, because he's actually become quite good at making videos for TikToks and stuff. So be sure to follow us on the social media threads. If you like what you heard today, please give us a follow. Give us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify if you listen to us on that. So that'll do it for this week. So until next time, we'll talk at you guys later.